Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
The wife wants to blame her husband, but for what and for what purpose? In today's installment, we'll find out. Enjoy the show! Tuesday, 12:13 p.m. Not knowing what to do with myself, I settled into Bud's office. I wasn't technically fired, but I was clearly not welcome in the office. Bill had to go back to his office after a meeting with Susie and Vicky. He said he would be difficult to reach most of the day, but that I could contact Janine if there was any new news. According to Tracy, Bud is now somewhere in Houston, following his hunch. I wish he would wait so I could go with him, but Tracy said he left early this morning. The worst thing is the feeling that my life is falling apart, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. I know I have good people who work for me, but I've always been a person who gets into things head over heels. This anticipation is driving me crazy. Even the report Tracy gave me from Bud didn't do much to help my irritation, since the audio and video recordings from my house the previous night showed nothing significant. It's been a rough day, and it's barely noon. In some ways, today is even worse than yesterday. At least I did something yesterday, even if I was running around the city like a headless chicken. I noticed that my attitude towards Susie and our marriage is gradually changing. It's becoming more and more difficult for me to understand how I can survive this. I'm still struggling with her betrayal on Friday night. Now I'm starting to get suspicious that she might be part of this conspiracy. If I find out that she is involved in this, then she will pay for it in full. I remember the morning meeting. As we were leaving, I asked Bill what he had done at the end of the meeting. In a way, it makes me angry. More precisely, it's more than anger. I'm not just angry, I'm jealous. He achieved his goal. He waited 10 years, but finally got his chance. The way I feel now, I don't want to wait anywhere near as long. I'm startled a little by a knock on the door, and I look up from the papers in Bud's office to see Tracy enter. "Bud's on the phone for you," she says. "Bud," I say into the phone, picking it up. Tracy smiles at me and leans across the table. Tracy smiles slightly and presses the glowing button on the front of the phone. Then I hear Bud talking to someone. Tracy then presses the speakerphone button, and Bud's voice now comes through the speaker. "Bud," I repeat. "What took so long, Tracy? Did you have to be taught how to use the phone?" "If only you knew how close you are to the truth," I laugh. Tracy smiles at me, finally straightening up and heading back to her desk, but not before adding a little fake hip sway along the way. "It's a pity I didn't go with you, Bud." "Yes, I can imagine, but you would only delay me. We've uncovered some important things here. But before I tell you, I want to make sure I have everything together. Can you arrange a meeting for Banner and me tomorrow morning?" "It might be hard in the morning, Bud. I have a meeting at my company where I have to give them my answer." Bill and I had almost no time to discuss the proposed package and set a time for tomorrow morning. "Damn," Bud grumbles. "Well, you'll need to hear what I found out before you go to this meeting, especially before meeting with your wife and her lawyer. Can you give me a hint about what you found out?" "I don't want to be mysterious, but until I'm sure, it's better to keep it a secret. We need to meet tonight. Find time for the three of you to meet and be late at that because you'll have a lot to do the rest of the day. You need to fly here to Houston immediately, urgently, right now. The sooner, the better. But first of all, make an appointment." "Okay, I'll do it. Here, I'll ask Tracy to book me a flight while I try to make an appointment for the evening. Do you think 9 o'clock is late enough? And where will I meet you when I arrive?" "Not until 9, I think. And no, you won't be meeting me in Houston. Better do it later, say at 10 in the evening. Make an appointment at my office in Dallas. While you're in Houston, you'll have your own assignment. We found your secretary. She's here, if you can believe it." "You're kidding." "Not at all. And I know you need to talk to her. So, write down this address and quickly come down here." I frantically write down the address Bud gives me. He reminds me to make an appointment again for the evening, and we say goodbye. I call Janine first as I head to Tracy's desk at the reception. Janine answers the first call, and I quickly tell her about Heidi's location. She immediately states that there's no way I will talk to Heidi alone. She tells me to book her a ticket along with mine and that she will meet me at the airport. I give Tracy my American Express card and ask her to find round-trip tickets for 2 to Houston, with us landing at Love Field around 9 p.m. While Tracy taps away at the keys, I return to my temporary office, pack my things, and prepare for the trip to the airport. When I return to her table, Tracy is just finishing up her reservation. I kiss her cheek as she hands me 2 e-tickets and an itinerary. I quickly call Janine to relay the flight information and arrange where we will meet at the airport. We'll both have to hurry to make it on time. As soon as I hang up, I remember that Bud told me twice not to forget. I manage to get Janine on the phone a second time and tell her that we need to arrange a meeting with Bill no earlier than 10 since our flight arrives at 9 p.m. She promises that someone will organize it. Tuesday, 3:49 p.m., Houston. Remember, Janine, I say quietly as we climb the steps. She's quite shy. I'll introduce you and explain why you're here. Just smile and nod, okay? She looks at me, smiling and nodding. This makes me laugh, one of the few times in the last 4 or 5 days. I look around the building where Bud says Heidi now lives. I shake my head and hope this is temporary for both of us. The front door wasn't guarded, so we just walked in and went up to the second floor. The corridor was at least clean but dimly lit. We walked down the corridor and soon stood in front of door 2011B. With a nervous sigh and a glance at Janine, I knock on the door. At first, I don't hear anything, but then I notice the slight sound of approaching footsteps. I see the peephole on the door close, and hear an oh my god from the other side. The door chain jingles, 2 bolts turn, and the door swings open to reveal a very surprised Heidi. After the last few days, I'm not at all sure how Heidi will feel about me. I watch her eyes fill with tears, and suddenly she crosses the threshold and surprises me with a very tight hug. Stepping back, she blushes, and the same old Heidi appears, smiling shyly. She notices my colleague. "I can't believe you're here, Mr. Vickers. I don't even know how you found me, but I guess I shouldn't be surprised," she says, not taking her eyes off Janine. I watch her glance at Janine's tight blouse and even tighter skirt. "Mr. Vickers?" she asks, with a slight hint of disapproval. "Heidi, you've been calling me Jake for 10 years. I see no reason why that should change now." A smile flickers on her lips, but she still casts a weary glance at Janine. Suddenly, I realize that if my suspicions are correct, then Heidi has no idea what's going on in Dallas, and she's wondering why I'm here with Janine. "Janine, this is Heidi Bias, my administrative assistant, but in reality, my right hand in conscience. Heidi, this is Janine Prescott, she's a paralegal." I wonder if I should explain more, but I decide that less is better. Heidi looks at us both with bewilderment, then steps back hesitantly and invites us inside. I've visited Heidi's house in Dallas several times, helping her with renovations and other things. I know most of her family lives here in Houston. In fact, my previous bad trip included some time in Houston, which is why Heidi accompanied me. Heidi leads us into a small living room and invites us to sit, asking if we would like something to drink. We both politely decline. "You are a difficult woman to find, Heidi," I joke with her. She looks at me, confused, then puzzled. "I'm so sorry that I left so suddenly. I wanted to stay at least until I found a worthy replacement for you, but I was told that there was no need to worry about it, and that the most important thing was to help my brother in Houston." I realized that Heidi just gave answers to several riddles, although I wasn't even sure what questions. "Heidi, are you okay?" I ask sincerely. "Are you in trouble?" She looks puzzled again. "Why yes, I'm fine. I was more worried about you. I tried to call you this morning, but no one answered your phone. I tried to call Mr. Weston, but was told he was unavailable. Then I called the reception and asked to be connected to you, and they told me that you no longer work there. Mr. Vickers, are you in trouble? They told me it was something routine. You were fired because of me?" She casts another suspicious glance at Janine, who is sitting opposite me. Despite the seriousness of my situation, I can't help but notice, out of the corner of my eye, the long stretch of leg. I have to force myself to focus on Heidi. Suddenly, I find myself in a situation where I don't even know how to continue. I glance at Janine, but she just shrugs, not offering to help. Finally, I say, Heidi, just tell me what's going on. Janine and I came here to find you and make sure you were okay. Heidi looks at me with confusion and shoots another angry look at Janine, who simply smiles back. Didn't Miss Hinckley tell you what happened? I ask. She promised to explain why I had to leave so urgently. No, sit down and tell me. This is terrible, Jake. I knew this would happen, but it's still terrible. Calm down and tell me, I say. This is my brother Bumper, the one who constantly has problems. Yes, the same one. He did something stupid this time. Jake, he was caught buying pills, and this is the third time. The prosecutor said he would go to prison. You know Bumper wouldn't hurt a fly. Can you imagine what they'll do to him in prison? I ask, concerned. When did all this happen? I add. Last week, Heidi sniffed. Right after you left Houston. Yes, why didn't you call and tell me? She looks at me, puzzled. I didn't call because I knew you were working in San Antonio. I couldn't interrupt your workday with my little problems, Jake. As your boss and as a friend, I think I should have, I reply. So, what's the situation now? How can I help? I ask. Heidi, she says, sounding really puzzled, what? Don't you know what's going on? I answer, even more confused, what should I know? My attention is momentarily distracted by Janine. About my brother, stupid. You sent Miss Hinckley here to help me, Heidi says, irritation creeping into her voice, drawing my attention back from my thoughts about Janine's legs to Heidi's face. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice a sly smile appears on Janine's face. Has Miss Hinckley appeared? Did she help you? I ask, trying to focus. She didn't report to you? For a moment, I think about continuing this game and seeing where it leads. Then, I push the thought aside and decide to take the straight path, which usually works. Heidi, I didn't send Miss Hinckley here, so tell me what happened. Heidi looks at me in amazement and slowly sits up. I glance at Janine but quickly look away. I clear my throat and force myself to look at Heidi again. I thought she came to my house in Dallas because you sent her. I'm pretty sure that's what she said. Why don't you tell me what happened, Heidi? I repeat firmly. Over the next 20 minutes, Heidi tells me almost everything about Hinckley's visit. Heidi found out about her brother on Monday at work. She immediately went to Tom Weston, my boss, to ask for family leave. Tom, of course, approved her request, and Heidi agreed to leave for Houston on Tuesday evening. Heidi explains that while she was packing and taking care of last-minute chores, her doorbell rang. She was quite surprised to see Miss Hinckley, the executive director of human resources, on the doorstep. Heidi invited her in, and Hinckley began to express sympathy for Heidi's brother, saying that she, too, had a younger brother who got into this dirty pill business. As Heidi explains to me, Hinckley appears to have relatives in the Houston police and prosecutor's office. She offered to make some calls and intervene in the situation with Heidi's brother. Hinckley suggested she could get Heidi's brother sent to rehab instead of jail. I interrupt Heidi for a moment and ask, do you have any idea how Hinckley might have found out about Bumper? Heidi looks puzzled for a moment and then says, Mr. Weston must have told her. Out of the corner of my eye, I notice Janine writing something down on her PDA. I realize that she is keeping an eye on all the open questions. I return to Heidi and ask her to continue the story. Heidi was absolutely thrilled that her brother wouldn't go to jail. She enthusiastically agreed to Hinckley's plan. Hinckley kept her word, and her brother was indeed sent to rehab. Heidi had been in Houston since last Tuesday and planned to move here permanently to continue helping her brother. She had already contacted a real estate agent to sell her home in Dallas. I knew that Heidi's parents were divorced, her father's whereabouts were unknown, and her mother could usually be found with a bottle of vodka for company. So everything seems to be okay. I ask with slight suspicion, is everything really okay? What about the close relationship between Hinckley and Schmidt? I suddenly remember the old saying about Greeks bearing gifts, and as far as possible, I wonder if this is too good to be true. If the world were perfect, my brother wouldn't be addicted to pills. But the center to which he was sent seems very promising. I even had hopes that he would be able to quit. I smile sincerely, happy for her. She's been through several circles of hell because of her brother and her entire family during the time that I've known her. For a moment, I debate whether I should bring up signing the statement. Heidi already has enough worries in her life. So, you got the position of partner? Heidi suddenly asks, bringing my thoughts back to the main topic. No, Heidi, I answer. Everything except that. You didn't receive it? Heidi is surprised. Don't worry about it, Heidi. Everything will be decided when the time comes. But Miss Hinckley said it was practically a done deal when I saw her last week, Heidi continues. She said that. I answer in surprise, making a mistake again, glancing at Janine. She seems to have been waiting for this moment and spreads her knees even wider for a moment before crossing her legs again. In that brief moment, it becomes clear that she's not just teasing me. Yes, Jake, Heidi replies. She even asked me to sign a glowing statement about how much you've done for the company. Is it true? I repeat, even more surprised. With an effort, I turn my head toward Heidi. Did you sign the affidavit? No, it was not a statement under oath, Heidi responds. I've worked for you long enough to know the difference. It was just a report on the results of the work. She asked me to sign the second page and initial both pages. Was it 2 pages? I ask. Yes, well, the first page was a rave. The second page said something about your leadership skills and that this was an area for improvement, Heidi explains. I asked Miss Hinckley about this, and she said that all job reports are like that. They have to write something that isn't positive, no matter how well someone does. I look at Heidi for a second, trying to figure out what she's telling me. Did they forge your signature? I take the folder with a copy of the application out of my briefcase, carefully unfold it to the second page, and hand it to Heidi. Heidi, is this the second page you're talking about? Heidi frowns for a moment, then quickly reads the single paragraph. Yes, I think that's exactly what I signed last week, but I don't understand all this notarial text, she says, looking puzzled. The notary wasn't here last week, just me and Miss Hinckley. Before I can stop her, Heidi turns the first page. I stand up to try to take the document away before she can read it. Unfortunately, Heidi reads quickly and, in a couple of seconds, manages to stand up and turn away so that I cannot take the document back. Oh God, she exclaims, sighing. I sit down and let her read the entire statement. I glance over at Janine, who is now sitting quietly with her legs still crossed, watching the interaction between Heidi and me with great interest. Heidi slowly sits down on a nearby chair. I watch as her face begins to turn red, and she repeats the phrase, "Oh my God," in a whisper over and over again. She finishes reading the first page and turns to the second, as if she expected something completely different to be written on it. She looks at the document for a long time. H. How, why, Jake, she stutters. Calm down, I tell her. I had the same feelings when I saw it for the first time. What does this mean, Jake, she asks. That says that we had an affair, I answer carefully. It says that you made me have a night with you, that you made me do things like, well, you get the idea. Heidi covers her face with her hands and begins to sob. I'm going to get up and walk over to her, but with Janine here, I know I have to be careful. Heidi, I need to ask you a question to which I already know the answer. I knew the answer before I came here, but I have to ask this question. Did you sign this affidavit? No, she says very decisively. I signed your report on the results. You didn't sign this document? I repeat. No, she answers. But the second page looks familiar. Is this the page you signed? The first page is different. No, I mean, yes. The second page is the same, but the first page is a lie. A page of disgusting lies. I would never do anything like that. We've never done anything like this, and you would never do that to Sussy. Heidi, will you sign a legal statement saying that you did not sign this document in its current form? I ask. Certainly, she says, and there is already anger in her voice. What does all this mean, Jake? Are you having problems? Is Miss Hinckley behind all this? What does this mean for my brother? Oh God, what does this all mean? Everything will be okay, Heidi, I reassure her. Don't worry. You haven't done anything wrong, and you don't have any problems. It's important that you stay here in Houston and take care of your family and your brother. You don't have to worry about anything else. I'll take care of it, okay? Just keep me updated on what's going on in your life. Heidi sniffles and nods. But what about you, Jake? This is about intimate harassment. What did you force me to do? I smile to ease her fears. Don't worry about me, Heidi. Those who know me well know the truth. And your signature on the legal statement will greatly help in resolving any other problems. And Susie, does she know about this? She asks. I just nod. Oh God, how is she? This must be terrible. She doesn't think that you and I did anything? Susie is struggling a little with all of this, but don't worry. I know that she thinks of you just as warmly as she did before all this became known. So don't worry about anything. Surely she can't seriously think that you and I did something. It's just one page, and it's obviously fake. The problem is that you are so honest. Your signature on this document, even if it is fake, carries a lot of weight. Plus, there's also, I stop, not wanting to continue. What else, Jake? Heidi asks wearily. I sigh. There are photographs. Photos? How can there be photographs? We've never been together. I shrug. Do you have them? I look at Janine, trying to ignore her playful behavior. She smiles and shrugs. They're pretty nasty. I don't care what you think, Jake Vickers. I have the right to see these photos, she suddenly screams, standing up. I sigh and take another folder out of my briefcase. You better sit down, Heidi. Heidi sits up slowly, not taking her eyes off the folder. When she's completely seated, I hand it to her. She takes one last look at me and opens it. Oh God, she says quietly, and I watch as her face turns bright red. She studies each photo, repeating oh God each time, blushing more and more. She looks at all 8 photos, then finishes and puts them all back into the folder, handing it back to me. I understand how people can be deceived by these photographs, Heidi finally says. She looks up at me. But this is not us. It's not me. I don't have a tattoo. A tattoo? I exclaim, surprised. I open the folder and start flipping through the photos. Look at the last photo, Heidi says quietly. I scroll to the last photo and carefully scan every inch, but I see nothing. I'm about to ask Heidi where she saw the tattoo when suddenly I notice it. It's right in the middle of the back, just above the buttocks. The sheet that had partially covered her had slipped down and was gathered around her waist, but just above the sheet, I can see the outline of some kind of tattoo. Wow, I mutter under my breath. This could be important. Do you mind if we include in the statement that you don't have a tattoo? I ask. Heidi nods. Janine quickly creates a new application using the software on her laptop and prints it out using her small but efficient portable printer. Being a notary, she also notarizes the document. It seems incredible, but in just a few hours, we were able to uncover many suspicious circumstances and cast significant doubt on the idea that Heidi and I were in that bed. I get up to leave. I go up to Heidi and hug her. She hugs me back. Sorry, Jake, she says. I'm sorry too, Heidi, I answer. I give her one last hug, then Janine and I walk out the door. I wish her well and remind her to call me if any difficulties arise. I then add that I expect a couple of calls a week from her, no matter how things are going. She nods, sniffles, and Janine and I close the door behind us. We are silent the whole way to the car. We fasten our seat belts and drive out of Heidi's driveway. Janine immediately reclines her seat a few inches. I can't help but look. My compliments to your hairdresser, I finally say with difficulty. Do you like it? She laughs. You know what? I'll think about it tonight in my hotel room, she says, then pauses. Do you think you would like to try your hand at this? In what manner? I ask, a little confused. Yes, she replies. You said you like the work of my hairdresser. Do you want to try being my hairdresser? I closed my eyes for a moment to compose myself. If this divorce takes place, if your divorce goes through, you won't be as interesting. She laughs, sitting up straight and pushing her knees together. And just to be clear, she continues, they call me the ice queen in the office. No one will believe a word you say if you decide to say anything. Suddenly, I feel completely alienated from this blonde black widow. I smile just for show. What won't they believe? I answer innocently. But I'll still ask you one question, I continue, looking at her. She tilts her head toward me but doesn't encourage me anymore. Why all the show? If you're the ice queen, then why this masquerade? And perhaps most importantly, why me? She laughs. Maybe because I can. I shake my head. This is not exactly an answer, but rather an evasion. Because you can? Do you always act like this? I'm really interested to know why tease, and why me? Yes, she replies with a grin and says nothing more. We are silent all the way to the airport until Janine speaks up. I was curious, she says. Curious? I repeat. In cases like yours, there is usually something to blame, she continues. Your wife would be unlikely to initiate a divorce based on the weak evidence we've seen so far. There must be something else in your past. From what I've seen, men can be divided into two categories. They are either cheaters or weaklings. So, I was curious to know if you were a cheater. I decided to test you. The cheater would have gotten me by now. I look at her. Is it true? I knew that we men are called the simple half, but I didn't think that we were so simple. I wait for an answer that doesn't come. I look at her again. So, because I didn't make a move toward you, you think I'm not the type to cheat? She looks at me and smiles slightly. I haven't decided yet, she says. I shake my head as I continue driving through the streets around the airport terminals. She basically just called me a wimp. A week ago, I would have laughed. Now, I'm just angry. Why is she so vindictive after what happened last Friday? Then I realized that she didn't know about last Friday. Bill said details of that night would not be shared with his staff unless necessary, so Janine is just a young, manipulative person, perhaps still trying to manipulate me. Suddenly, I decide that I just don't care. Despite her physical beauty and charm, I sense a lot of hidden emotional baggage that I have neither the desire nor the time to delve into. Once I reach the departure terminal, I pull over to the curb and park the car. Why don't you check in and I'll return the car and catch up with you later? I suggest. She looks at me, puzzled. Could I go with you to rent the car? There's no need for both of us to deal with the car or the bus. Plus, you have a big bag with all your equipment. You go ahead, and I'll catch up, I explain. She looks at me for a moment and shrugs. She seems to understand that all our games had just reached their logical conclusion. She opens the car door but then stops and turns to me, smiling. Her hand slides and rests on the inside of my thigh. You don't trust me, Jake? I turn and look her straight in the eyes without hesitation and without a hint of irony. I trust you with your life, I reply. She laughs and removes her hand. She opens the car door and gets out, looking back through the window. Jake, you still have a lot to learn. It wasn't about your life. I watch her enter the terminal. You bet, I think to myself, and thank God I have something to learn. It's not that I want to learn from you. Tuesday, 9:48 p.m. Janine and I arrive back in Dallas, Fort Worth and are immediately separated. I'm glad the flight from Houston was short, as barely a dozen words were said the entire time. I guess she didn't like the way I treated her in the terminal. I get the impression that few men do this to her. I pick up my car from the short-term parking lot and head to Bud's office, where Bill and I are to meet with him to discuss the latest discoveries and strategies. I pull up to Bud's office and notice Bill's car is already parked. I walk inside and I'm surprised to see Tracy still there. Have you been here all day? No, I left earlier because I knew I would have to return in the evening, she answers. Bud isn't here yet, but he called about 10 minutes ago and said he just got off the highway and would be here soon. Your lawyer is already here, she adds, nodding toward the conference room. I start to turn toward the conference room when the office door suddenly swings open, and Bud walks in with a big, smug smile. Thank you, Tracy, he tells her. Why don't you go home and tell your husband that I'll somehow compensate him for making you come so late? Tracy smiles and takes her purse, preparing to leave. The poor girl had kept her office open for us while she waited for her boss to return. I promise I will make it up to her, Bud says. She replies, yes, but Bud asks if my lawyer is here, and when she nods, he asks her to wait a minute so he can get us both into his office. She tells him she's already sent my lawyer to the conference room. He nods in appreciation, and Bud and I walk into the conference room. I introduce Bud to Bill. Bud asks us to make ourselves comfortable while he checks the results of some other parts of the investigation. We hear him talk to Tracy for a few minutes through the slightly open door, then thank her for staying late and wish her a safe trip home. He disappears for several long minutes and finally bursts into the conference room. Sorry to keep you both waiting, Bud says, moving around our chairs to get to the other side of the table. I wanted to get the latest reports from Tracy and my staff, he explains, taking his seat. Bud looks at my face and grins. Sorry, I know this isn't funny, but you look like you're about to explode. So let's get started. What do you say? I'm for it, I reply. I almost exploded. Bud laughs again. Okay, first let's take a look at their original application, which they claim was signed by your secretary. He takes out the original application and places it on the table. First of all, Jake, do you know anything about printers and the Secret Service? Secret Service? I ask again, confused. Yes. The Secret Service is part of the Treasury Department. Everyone knows they are directly responsible for protecting the president, but their original task was to protect the country's monetary system. When counterfeiting occurs, the Secret Service intervenes. What does the Secret Service have to do with Susie and me? I ask, a little worried. Nothing, except that they did us a great service. What do you mean? With the advent of computers, especially printers, copiers, and so on, it has become much easier to print out something that looks like a $20 bill. Of course, to successfully counterfeit a bill, you need to use the right paper and watermarks, but that's another story. But at first glance, you can print something that looks very authentic. The Secret Service convinced most, if not all, printer manufacturers to print a nearly invisible mark on every sheet of paper. Almost every color printer sold in this country prints an invisible, unique identification code on every sheet of paper. The mark only appears when ultraviolet light is used. Even if you somehow discover it, it won't tell you anything because it's a code. I'm starting to get excited. Are you saying that we can determine what printer these pages were printed on? More than that, son, he continues. Since printers are connected to computers, and all computers have a time concept, this invisible tag not only contains the printer's unique code, but also has a date and timestamp. If you identify the mark and know how to decipher it, you can determine not only what printer the sheet of paper was printed on, but also on what day and at what time. Actually, it's easy to see the mark, you just need the right light source. The tricky part is deciphering the tag. Unfortunately, each printer manufacturer has developed its own code, but luckily for us, I know a guy who has these codes, and I showed him your application. What did he find? Bill asks. Before I can respond, Bud adds, both pages were printed on the same printer. Oh, I say, hoping to hear something different. But they were printed at different times, he adds with a smile. At different times? I repeat. Yes. Both pages were printed on January 17th. The second page was printed first at 7:03 a.m. The first page was printed 15 hours later, at 10:13 p.m. How is this possible? I ask, stunned. That's the day Heidi said she signed the statement, but she also said she left for Houston that afternoon. She was on the plane when the first page was printed. She couldn't have put her initials on it. Exactly, Jake, Bud says. But then how did her initials end up there? Obviously, Heidi didn't put them there. In truth, it was not a very good attempt to forge a document. The second page was printed on a laser printer using toner. Heidi's initials look real and are ink. We could even figure out which pen was used based on ink analysis, but that would be redundant. The important thing is that Heidi's initials on the first page are made with printer toner. Oh my God, I mutter, realizing that this completely refutes the original statement. Okay, I understand the difference between toner and ink, but I'm curious. If the initials on the first page were created by the printer, do they exactly match the initials on the second page? You're on the right track, boy. You're smart. Even though your dad nags about you, Bud chuckles. We checked it out, and the two sets of initials don't match exactly. We have no evidence of exactly how this was done, but it can be assumed that Heidi's signature was scanned from the first original page and then digitally altered before being transferred to the fake first page. This first page was then printed later. I think I would feel better if the two sets of initials matched, but at least now we have proof that this is all a setup, I mutter. One more thing, Jake, Bud adds. I can do a lot because I know a lot of people. I always exchange favors. Bill laughs. And who did you exchange favors with, Bud? Bud looks at Bill with a grin. I will never tell you this, but I know that Jake's company leases the 14th and 15th floors of a building in downtown Dallas, and I also know that the entire building's security is outsourced, and access to all offices requires a security badge. Don't tell me, I smile. Yes, a friend of a friend just printed out a badge access log for the 2 floors rented by your company from January 17th to midnight on the 18th, Bud says. And I ask, not wanting to be in the dark any longer. See for yourself, he chuckles, handing the printout onto the table. Bill looks over my shoulder with equal interest, and I quickly scan the report. I'm particularly interested in early morning access. The log notes several badges used during the early morning hours, likely by security or technical support personnel. But 2 entrances catch my attention. At 6:23 a.m., 2 badges were used on the 15th floor within seconds of each other. I look up at Bud, disappointment visible on my face. Okay, we have 2 interesting badge numbers, but who do they belong to? A little faith, Jake, he says, taking a second printout from the same folder and placing it on the table between Bill and me. I laugh. You're enjoying stretching this out too much. Bill takes the second printout, which appears to list all the badge numbers of every employee in the building. Looking over each other's shoulders, we scan Bill's list to find the 2 numbers that appeared at 6:23 on my list. I found it, he says. Evelyn J. Hinley. Damn her, I mutter. I tell Bill the second number and watch him turn a few pages. Timothy K. Schmidt, he says. I slowly lean back in my chair. I'll kill this stupid. I look up and see Bud looking at me intently. He glances at Bill. Jake, I see what you're thinking, and I think your lawyer understands it too. I can tell you from personal experience that you shouldn't go to jail because of a woman, he says. He looks at Bill again and continues, someday I'll tell you a personal story. So don't stress yourself out and don't make plans. You still have a tough road ahead of you, and you don't need criminal charges on top of what you already have. I consider Bud's words and nod, straightening up. But in the back of my mind, there's a thought, he's right. Jake, we have more evidence to look at, so let's not focus on just one, Bud continues. We've already found a few inconsistencies in this affidavit, but as they say, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So let's take a closer look at these photos. I assign them to someone I trust to check them. First, we can say with great confidence that the photographs have not been faked. Whoever made them used regular 35mm film, not a digital camera. With digital photos, you can always tell they're fake, whether they are or not. But it is much more difficult to make invisible retouching of negatives. I don't know if they did this on purpose, but they ended up with almost irrefutable evidence. Sorry, Jake, but the photos are real, and I have to believe that it's you in the lead role. Bud looks at me for a few seconds before continuing. Now, like I said, we suspected that the photos were staged, and we can prove it with little clues here and there. First, we know that someone else took these photos. The only way one of the 2 people in the photo could control the camera is with a remote control and a tripod. My expert zoomed in on some of the photos, focusing on the objects on the nightstand. The first 3 pictures were taken from almost the same position, and the clock shows that they were all taken at 1:30 a.m. What's interesting is that your pose, Jake, is the same in all 3 photos. But in the 4th photo, the situation becomes a little more interesting. The time has changed to 1:31 a.m., and this is the only photo that shows any movement on your part. In the remaining 4 photos, your pose is identical to the one in the 4th. Apart from my wife, I add. It is highly suspicious that someone barely moves during intimate. There is another interesting detail in the 4th photo, Bud continues. The expert who looked at the pictures believes the camera moved a full foot to the left. How did you find out? Asks Bill. It's the calendar and the clock on the nightstand, Bud replies. He takes 2 more photographs out of the folder, looks at them for a moment, and places them on the table for Bill and me to look at. Pointing to the first new photo, Bud continues, this is a close-up of the nightstand from the 3rd photo, from the camera's perspective. Notice that the calendar is in front and to the right of the clock. The leftmost edge of the calendar overlaps the right edge of the clock. Now, look at the same view in the 4th photo. We watch for a few seconds and immediately see what Bud is pointing at. The enlarged view of the 4th photograph shows the slight distance between the calendar and the clock. I see it, I say. This gap could only have occurred if the clock, calendar, or camera had moved. And it's safe to say that the clock or calendar did not move. That's right, says Bud. As I said, my expert was even able to determine that the camera had moved about a foot to the left. I gave him your height, and he made some guesses about the distance between your waist and the top of your head. Using this as a basis, he calculated that the camera was approximately 9 feet from the subject. Once he knew this, he was able to use geometry to determine how much the camera had moved. Great job, Bud, exclaims Bill. We have now proven that there was at least one other person in the room. Oh, we're just getting started, Bill. I had a very fruitful trip to Houston, Bud laughs. What else? I ask impatiently. Bud laughs again. Calm down, guy. Do you have a date today? Or Bud suddenly stops mid-sentence. Sorry, Jake. It somehow fell through before I could think about it. I shake my head and gesture that everything is fine and that he should continue. Blushing, Bud says, I spent most of my time in Houston at the hotel you stayed at, Jake. I asked around and found out the name of the bellhop who had worked there the longest. If you want to know what's going on at the hotel, talk to the bellhops or cleaners. I found one young guy who had been working there for a few years, and all it took was a picture of Grant for him to start talking nonstop. The first thing I showed him was one of these photographs and asked him about the calendar. He said they don't use anything like that in the rooms. The only way the calendar could appear in the room is if it was brought in by a client. Then this bellhop starts playing detective and notices the water bottle in the photo. I asked him how he knew this. He said the hotel had an exclusive deal with the Ice Mountain brand, and the water was Aquafina. So, Jake, I have a question for you. Did you bring water to your room? No, I don't think so, I answer, trying to remember. I definitely didn't leave the hotel to buy water and bring it back. You know I have a low alcohol tolerance and I often just drink water. While I was there, I only drank what was in the lobby or in the minibar of my room. You told me on Monday that you and a few other guys were celebrating on Saturday night. What were you drinking then? I drank iced tea for dinner. After that, I had 1 beer, and then water. Wait, I just remembered something. We bought several rounds of drinks. Of course, I was on a cheap date because by that time, I was only drinking water. I remember Schmidt buying the last round. He said he needed to go to the bathroom, so he brought the drinks himself. I didn't need more water, but he brought me a bottle anyway, and I actually drank it. In fact, I now remember that I took this bottle, half full, with me to my room. Suddenly, I started to feel very tired and went to my room. I remember almost nothing after that until the next morning. I look at Bud. Why are you smiling? I ask him. Well, what you just said matches what I found out, Bud replies. Do you have anything else? Asks Bill. Oh yes, and something important, Bud says. I told you I became friends with that bellhop. I asked him to do something for me. It cost me Franklin this time, but it was worth it. Well, what is this? I ask. When I first entered the hotel, I noticed the security cameras. I asked the bellhop if there were cameras only in the lobby or if they were everywhere. He said cameras are only installed at the front desk and in the main hallways of each floor, near the elevators. I asked if he could find out what room you stayed in and if there was floor footage available for the evening of January 15th. Then I had to get Franklin, but like I said, it was worth it. Bud takes a VHS tape out of his bag. My eyes widen as I see him stand up and walk toward the TV in the corner of the room. I've already looked at it several times and even worked on some of it, so it's already rewound to about the right place. Bud presses play, and the image appears on the screen. It shows a view of the corridor. 2 elevator doors are visible in the left foreground. To the right is a kiosk and an old-fashioned cigarette but been converted into a trash bin. In the distance is a long corridor with an endless series of room doors. The top right corner displays the date and time. It is now January 15th, 1:23 a.m. In the lower right corner, it says 18. A few seconds after the image appears, we see the elevator in the far left corner of the screen open. We don't see what's happening inside, but soon 2 figures appear and begin to walk down the corridor, moving away from us. Both are wearing coats, and the larger one has a hat on his head. Judging by the size and gait, this is a man. The other figure is clearly recognizable by her medium-length hair, reaching the middle of her back. This is the woman from the photographs. We watch them walk down the corridor. Bud comments that he went and counted the number of doors between the elevator and my hotel room. They stopped right in front of my room, he says. As the 3 of us watch, we see the man in the coat take out a key card, open my door, and disappear into my room. Damn it! I exclaim. This proves that someone entered my room right before the photos were taken. You did it, Bud, Bill says. Not so fast, Bill adds. I agree, this seems like the final nail in the coffin, but the 2 naysayers I heard this morning won't see it the same way. What do you mean? I ask. Obviously, this is the woman from the photographs, but the man in the photographs could be you. He was your height. They will claim that this is proof of your betrayal. After all, no one but you is supposed to have your key card. Damn, you're right, I exclaim. Not so fast, Kimosabe, Bud laughs. I haven't shown you everything yet. First of all, this is not the only recording I got. I got all the footage from Jake's floor that evening. I have a clear recording of Jake going into his room an hour and a half earlier and not coming out until the morning. Secondly, as I said, I used several connections. As soon as I saw this footage, I ran to another video expert I know in Houston and asked him to take a look. At first, when my expert watched the footage several times, he said it was unlikely that we would be able to see anything on these 2 people since they seemed to be aware of the camera and turned their faces as soon as they approached its field of view. Bud takes out another folder from his magic bag. This time, he pulls out one photograph. It's an enlarged image of an ashtray. Right on the edge of the chrome ashtray, we see the elevator doors open and 2 people standing there. Damn, I say, we can almost see them. Wait, Bud says, it's an increase. Bud takes out another photo and places it on the table. Bill and I both look at it and then at each other. Is this Schmidt? Asks Bill. I look at the magnification again. Although it's grainy and somewhat distorted due to the curvature of the chrome, we can clearly see the 2 elevator doors in the shape of parentheses. Between these 2 curved elevator doors, 2 faces can be distinguished. One belongs to the woman in my photographs, the other belongs to the vice president of sales of my company, Thomas K. Schmidt himself. I whistle. That's not all, Bud says happily. I asked the bellhop to get the security logs for your floor from that evening. It turns out they indicate that your room was opened by someone from maintenance at 1:23 a.m. I found this guy, and he didn't admit anything except that he lost his card somewhere that night. He didn't notice it until around 4 a.m. or so. I'll bet you $1 to a donut that he took the bribe. After all, that's how I got all my information. Bud raises his hand when I try to speak. One more thing, Jake, and then I'll finish. The messenger even recognized this woman from your photographs. She is a high-class girl of easy virtue. He called her by name, and I even found her. She didn't answer many questions, but she said she was hired as a joke. She just pretended to have an intimate with you, but she didn't. She laughed and said they didn't even bother to take your pants off. Of course, she refused to be written down or sign any documents. Bud smiles and throws the audio cassette on the table. But as luck would have it, my tape recorder was accidentally turned on, so I screwed up and recorded it anyway. It won't be admissible as evidence in court, but it may carry some weight with a particular prosecutor. Bud throws the last photo on the table, and we look at it. Here she is, Jake. Here's your mysterious girlfriend. I lean back and laugh, more out of relief than for any other reason. It's a deep laugh, the one I've needed for days. I look at my watch and see that it's barely 10:30 p.m. I quickly call Vicky Gambino. She doesn't answer, but I leave a message asking to meet her and Susie tomorrow. We have the final piece of evidence for Susie, and if it doesn't convince her of my innocence, then I won't fight her divorce suit. Both Bill and Bud remain silent while I make the call. Bill puts his hand on my shoulder. I smile, and the two of us begin to discuss strategy for the next day. Bud gets up and makes fresh coffee, and over the next hour, we discuss a few ideas. Just as we're about to leave for the evening, my cell phone rings. It's Gambino. Bud's phone also rings at the same moment, so I get up and leave. Vicky says she received my message and spoke to Susie. They will meet us at Susie's office tomorrow at 8:30 a.m. After finishing the call, I return to the conference room and tell Bill, game on. Bill and I quietly discuss strategy for the next day while Bud finishes his call with a few grunts. Finally, he ends the call and sits quietly, too quietly. Is something wrong, Bud? I ask. I'm not sure yet, he answers gruffly. I still have a couple of things to do. I'll let you know when the time comes. Bill and I exchange puzzled looks. Bud looks a little depressed. Even though he just solved the case, he appears to be hiding something. But it may have something to do with another agency matter. It's hard to imagine what could go wrong in our case that could cloud what was revealed today. With Bud feeling this way, Bill and I silently agree that it's time to disband our little band. After shaking hands, Bill and I head outside, say a few last words, and then go our separate ways. I return to my hotel, open the minibar, and take a cold beer to the balcony. I take a deep breath and begin to reflect on the last few days. Life has been a real ride and a whirlwind since Friday. For perhaps the first time, I'm starting to think seriously about what happened on Friday night. My mind was in turmoil. I was so mad that night, but now I see how Schmidt set it all up. Looking back, it's easy to see how Susie came to her conclusions. But couldn't she have just talked to me about it instead of humiliating me and literally sending me to the hospital? Her reaction was fast and deadly, but she always was. I knew that even before our wedding. I still feel a lot of anger toward her for not even giving me a chance to talk about it. And then there's the whole question of how she slept with that man right in front of me, even knowing how ruthless she can be. The level of deception to lure me into this chair and then the betrayal. Can we get through this? I know in my heart that I love her. This is not a question. And strangely, it's not even a question of trust. This was an isolated incident that she committed in retaliation. She was reacting to her own rage, and once she learned the truth, she would be horrified. I head back inside the hotel room for a moment to grab a second beer before heading out onto the balcony again. Sitting heavily in my chair, I sigh, knowing that I want to somehow fix everything but not knowing how to put all the pieces together. I look out at the lights of Dallas while I sip my beer. I want to get drunk, but I know I need to be fully conscious for my meeting with Susie tomorrow. Halfway through my beer, my cell phone rings. I quickly check and see it's Bud. Bud speaks briefly and informs me that a package is waiting for me at the front desk of my hotel. No later than 7 p.m., he says. The package will contain several items marked for Banner's eyes only. He makes me promise to give it only to Banner and not look into the folders that are marked. Reluctantly, I make a promise to him that I won't look, but not without arguing with him for a few minutes. Bud, as always, says little while I argue with him. His only answer is that there is a time and place for everything. Now is not the time. I grumble in response, and Bud makes me promise again not to look in the files. After talking with Bud, I try to remember what I heard in his office to understand why he is so rude. I shake my head, realizing that Bud said very little even then. I feel a sense of foreboding when I call Bill to tell him about the package. Bill is as puzzled as I am and suggests we meet at the same little cafe no later than 7:45, so he can see what Bud put in the package. Wednesday, 8:30 a.m. To say I didn't sleep well last night is an understatement. The only thing harder than sleeping last night was resisting the temptation to look at the package that was waiting for me at the hotel reception, seeing all the contents with Bill's name on them. Somehow, I was able to resist checking them out. The only reason I was able to hold off was because I gave my word to an old friend like Bud. Bill has just joined me at a table in the corner. First, I push the coffee I bought for him toward him, and then I hand him the package from Bud. He lifts the lid of the box and frowns for a moment, takes out 2 folders, and then stands and takes a few steps away. He looks through both folders while I take the recorder out of my jacket pocket. It's also tagged for Bill, but I kind of broke my promise to Bud. I promised not to look in the folders. I didn't say anything about not listening to the audio recording. I look at the recorder, desperately trying to contain the anger that threatens to burst out, anger at Susie, if not pure hatred for that idiot Schmidt. Only the desperation in my heart helps keep this anger at bay. Bill returns to our table and asks if I'm ready to go to Susie's office. I ask him to wait a minute, and then I explain to him about the tape and what I heard on it. He places a comforting hand on my shoulder, and we discuss how we could use this information. Our mood has changed dramatically compared to last evening. Gloomily, we gather our materials and begin to walk toward my wife's office. Both women have an expectant look on their faces as we enter. Silently, I watch as the expression of expectation gives way to bewilderment on both of them. I understand that they expected us to attack. Instead, we walked in like undertakers, ready to bury the dead. Bill takes out the affidavit that Janine signed yesterday from his briefcase and gives copies to Susie and Vicky. "What is this?" asks Susie. "I suggest you read it," Bill says. The document speaks for itself. "Where's the original?" Susie asks. "We have it. We plan to return it today before we leave," Bill replies. Both quickly scan the document with their eyes and look at each other. "Did you meet Heidi before she signed this?" Susie asks me. "Yes, I have," Bill answers for me while I remain silent. I feel anger bubbling beneath the surface. I don't trust myself to speak. "Then I agree with your lawyer. This document really speaks for itself," says Susie. "It says that Heidi, when confronted by Jake, would sign anything." "What?" I shout. Bill's hand immediately and firmly squeezes my forearm, stopping any words I was about to say. "Of course she'll sign it, Jake. She was your secretary for many years. She's been your lover for who knows how long. You intimidated her and basically forced her to sign this new affidavit. Have you completely lost your mind?" I answer in amazement. "You are completely ignoring everything you know about Heidi and me over the past 8 years. You cheated on me," Susie replies. "I have no idea who you are now." "After last Friday, I can say the same thing," I hiss, forgetting my promise to let Bill do the talking. His reminder is to squeeze my forearm even tighter. At least this time, Susie has to look away, but only for a moment. When she looks into my eyes again, a prosecutor's mask appears on her face. Bill takes out another document from his briefcase. "This is a copy of the original document you gave my client," Bill says, handing them copies of the original affidavit. "We would like to know if you've noticed a strikingly different tone between the first and second pages of the affidavit that you believe to be truthful. Did you notice that the first page is a harassment complaint and the second page accuses my client of lacking leadership skills, as if it were a performance evaluation? The 2 pages don't match." "This is an opinion shared only by you and your client," replies Vicky Gambino. "Susie," I exclaim, forgetting my promise again. "Heidi told me she never saw that first page. She says the original first page was my job description. She says she signed the second page and was told to initial both pages. She says there was no notary." "Of course she'll say that, Jake. You forced her to cover your 5th place. Did anyone notice that this woman signed 2 completely different affidavits?" Doesn't that speak volumes about her character? You know very well what kind of character Heidi has, I challenge. That's what I wanted to hear, Susie says, her voice dripping with disdain. My husband is defending his mistress against his wife. I look at her, stunned. Whose cow would moo? I simply answer, but at the same time, I see her resolve weakening a little. She knows I'm telling the truth about Heidi's character. She may have lost faith in me, but not in Heidi. Why didn't Heidi say anything about this before? Susie challenges. Heidi's brother started taking pills again and was arrested. Heidi went to Houston to help her family deal with the situation, I reply. I wonder if you dare to guess who actually got the signature on this document, Bill asks, waving a copy of the first affidavit. None of them rise to Bill's bait. The executive director of human resources, Miss Hinley, personally came to Heidi's home to obtain her signature just hours before Heidi flew to Houston. Hinley offered to help Heidi with her brother's problem. She told Heidi not to worry about how much time she would need in Houston and that she could take as much time as she needed. Hinley even said that my client personally sent her to Heidi with instructions not to worry about the family vacation. Jake didn't send Miss Hinley on this trip. Why would the HR executive go so far beyond her scope to help Jake's former secretary without even telling him? Why didn't she send one of the several HR people who work under her? And not to mention, Jake didn't even know about Heidi's brother's problems until yesterday. As far as we know, Miss Hinley is a close friend and professional ally of Mr. Schmidt, with whom you recently began working together, if I'm not mistaken. Susie glances at me when she hears the mention of her and Schmidt. For a moment, her face turns pale, but almost immediately, the prosecutor's mask descends on her again. She theatrically raises her hands. None of these arguments matter, she says. The photographs themselves incriminate you. Even if they don't have Heidi in them, it's obvious you, someone. I'm not divorcing Heidi. I'm divorcing you, I reply. Bill's hand squeezes my forearm again, warning me. Bill looks at Vicky and says, as we understand from yesterday's meeting, there were 2 and only 2 counts that resulted in the divorce suit. While both are quite serious on their own, together they create an irresistible case. We have already questioned the first charge, the affidavit. We have even more information that will completely dispel any remaining doubts about the original affidavit and prove that it was forged. The second accusation is the photographs, about which we also raised serious doubts. Wouldn't it be wise for everyone to cool down, take a step back, and get the facts straight before moving on? The original affidavit has not been proven false, says Vicky Gambino. As everyone knows, Miss Bevis is in these photographs and she is now trying to cover for her boss. After she accused him, she had doubts and didn't want to bite the hand that would feed her in the future. Nothing has proven that the original document is not valid. Bill looks at me and I subtly shake my head, letting him know I shouldn't reveal the tattoo just yet. None of them appear to be susceptible, as already stated. We have evidence that will dispel any doubt about the original affidavit. We just need time and opportunity to present it. I really doubt it, and I'm getting tired of this whole show, interjects Susie. Jake, believe me, I seriously looked at the evidence. It made me sick. Then I asked experts to study it, and they confirmed it. This show you and your lawyer are putting on only makes you look even more desperate and pathetic. Desperate and pathetic? I counter. Coming to the conclusions that you made proves one thing, that you were unable to look at the situation objectively and did not take into account all the facts. Clearly, you have completely ignored any character issues. After you see what we show you this morning, I'm sure you'll look at it completely differently. What we show will completely destroy the 2 pieces of evidence you plan to use against me. I'm literally gritting my teeth to keep myself from commenting further about last Friday. Like Bud said, now is not the time or place, at least not at the moment. Deep down, I wonder why I'm even sitting here. Jake, this is not a game, Susie says. It's not something you have to win at any cost, even if you have to make something up. And suddenly, I understand why I'm still sitting here, trying to prove my innocence. Everything we show can be easily verified or has already been verified. But you're right about something, this is not a game. But this is something I have to win. You accused me of something extremely offensive, something I would never do. You questioned my dignity and my character, and you punished me severely, both emotionally and physically, for something I never did. Even if you refuse to see the truth, what we've done over the past few days to completely refute all your accusations is important to me. It's up to you to decide if it's important to you and perhaps to us. Thank you for those brilliant points, lawyer, Susie replies sarcastically. I smile back at her, mainly because I know it pisses her off when she tries to get under my skin, and I just smile back to prevent the conversation from getting worse. Bill interjects, have you heard anything about using invisible codes on printers that the Secret Service requires manufacturers to print on every sheet of paper? No wonder Susie knows about this. However, Vicky Gambino has never heard of it. I sit back and drink my coffee while Susie explains the case to her lawyer in her usual concise and efficient manner. So, what about these invisible codes? Asks Vicky. Are you aware that 2 pages of the so-called original affidavit you gave me on Monday were printed at different times on the same day? Bill asks. Isn't that logical? Vicky responds. The pages should come out of the printer at close intervals. Yes, that makes sense, Bill replies. But not in this case. In this case, the second page was printed at 7:03 a.m. The first page was printed 15 hours later, at 10:13 p.m. This page was printed after the affidavit was signed by Heidi and supposedly notarized. It was printed just a few hours after Heidi boarded a plane to Houston. If Heidi was in Houston, how could her initials appear on this page? I watch as Susie straightens up and narrows her eyes suspiciously. Can you prove it? You can prove it yourself, Bill says. Your employees have even more experience than we do. This is something that could have been done easily. Bill takes a folder out of his briefcase and flips through several files until he finds the one he needs. Here you go. He throws the folder on the table. This is the same folder and the same original so-called affidavit that you gave me on Monday. Let your experts check it. Susie takes the folder from the table and opens it, checking the contents. I'll check, she replies emotionlessly. So, if they were printed at different times, that doesn't prove anything, as you claim. Perhaps there was an error in the text and they simply reprinted the first page, says Vicky. Miss Gambino, Bill quickly interjects, I'm sure you understand that this would never be done with a document that was supposedly notarized. But more importantly, if they did reprint the first page, how do you explain Heidi's initials on it? Let me remind you, by that time, Heidi was already in Houston. What's more, I add, Heidi's initials on the first page are not written in ink, but printed in toner. The same toner was used to print the first page. This fact is confirmed by Heidi's new statement, in which she says she never saw or signed this page. I think we have sufficiently proven that at least the first page of the affidavit you submitted is a forgery. Not only was it not signed by Heidi Bevis, but she had never actually seen the page until it was introduced to her this week by Jake. Bill adds, without admitting anything, the look on Susie and Gambino's faces tells me everything I need to know. They realized that this affidavit was forged. I hope you understand, Bill adds, that the fact that the affidavit was falsified also indicates malice. I hope you're not implying that my client forged this affidavit or did anything with the intent to harm, Vicky says quickly. I think it's clear that your client has done some pretty malicious things, I add hotly. Bill's hand squeezes my forearm again, silencing me. We are not alleging that your client participated in the forgery of the affidavit. We even have evidence of who did it. It's a shame your client didn't do enough research to discover this information on her own. It only took us a few hours with far fewer resources to discover this once we had the document, but we suspected it was fake from the very beginning, while your client had no doubt. Bill raises his hand to stop Gambino's objection. We want to move on to other information that we want to present to you. Again, he reaches into his briefcase and pulls out another folder. Opening it, he hands over 2 copies of the pass logs for the day on which the affidavit was printed. We have already highlighted important information about when access was gained to the floor and also noted who owned these passes, Bill explains. He specifically points out that at the time the second page was printed at 7:03 a.m., the access logs show that there were only 2 people on the floor. Bill pauses to let both women determine for themselves that the 2 people were Hinley and Schmidt. What do you think of our story today? In my opinion, the first part was very emotional for our main character because he was going through a lot in this part. What is your impression? Write in the comments. See you in the comments.